What's up, YouTube? It's your girl, Mina Cakes, and I'm here with just a vlog. There's some things I wanted to talk about. First, let me go ahead and address my hair because it looks a hot mess. This is 2 days after my pipe cleaner curls. I wanted to talk about the Troy Davis case. Let me just organize my thoughts here. All right, so let me just say first, I am against the death penalty. I don't feel like we have the right to determine when another person is going to die, especially as a punishment for them killing someone else or doing anything. I don't feel like we should be making that decision. I feel like it's inconsistent. There are some people who are on death row who, like Troy Davis, they killed one person. That's bad, but there's also people who are in jail for life or for some other sentence that's not death penalty, and they have killed multiple people. There are people who have had more gruesome crimes. There are people who have had more premeditated crimes. There are people who have confessed to the crime, and they are not on death row. So it's inconsistent. It just kind of depends on the district attorney, and it's just inconsistent how we issue the death penalty. And then it's not fair. If you are a person of color, if you are male, or if you don't have a lot of money to get a really great lawyer, then you are much more likely to be on death row than, if you don't qualify there. So it's not fair. And then it's not a crime deterrent. It does not deter crime, and it costs the state more money to put people to death than to just have them in jail for life, because they get to appeal their case so many times. So that's just how I feel about the death penalty. I'm not for it. I will say also that I was a bandwagon jumper. I did not know who Troy Davis was before the day he was scheduled to be executed. I was on Twitter. It was all over my timeline, and I got involved. I ended up reading a 174-page it was the petition, the one, his appeal that was denied, the one that was, that said all those witness recantations was smoke and mirrors. It's online. You can read the whole thing. It's really long, 174 pages, but I went through each page. And I feel like Troy Davis was guilty. This was not an obscure crime that happened in some dark alley and nobody knows, and we need all of this physical evidence. This was a cop who was shot at a Burger King in broad daylight in front of other people. So, and it was one of two people who could have done it. Troy Davis or his friend. That's it. There was no other, random person who might have shot this and killed this cop. That's it. It's him or his friend. About the witness recantations, is that a word? Anyway, about those, most of the people who recanted their story were friends or well-known people that knew Troy Davis personally. They weren't, it wasn't like the people who were witnesses there, there were many witnesses who saw this because they were at the Burger King, across the street near the Burger King, heard what happened, saw what happened. Those aren't the people, the majority of the people who were recanting their testimony. And it wasn't a full recantation of any of these testimonies. There was one person who was like, I made it up. And the story was obviously made up. So there was enough, I feel like enough people said something to cast enough doubt for Troy Davis to not be on death row, but not enough to prove his innocence. He had the opportunity during his appeal trial to have these people who were alive and who were recanting their story. And it wasn't really like a recanting. It wasn't like all these people said, oh, no, the cops, they were pressuring me, and this, my whole story was a fake. It was an affidavit, a written statement that was different of what happened, that was different, these people's stories, what happened, that was different than what they said at trial or what they said to the cops. So, his defense team is like, well, that's recanting their story. This is clearly different than what they said. And some of it is like, because I read it, it was just like one sentence that's different. And just, I feel like, that one in particular, I feel like if the person would have threw some more articles in that sentence, it would have been clearer. But That person happened to be not alive anymore, so they couldn't, nothing else could be said. But there were other people who recanted their story, mostly friends of Troy Davis, who had the opportunity to get on the stand during his defense attorney could have called them to the stand to say what happened. You know, why did you recant your story? Why is this one line different from what you said at trial or what happened? And he didn't do that. And I felt like he didn't do that because he really didn't disprove that he was not the killer. It did cast some doubt, but it was not a whole lot of doubt because, again, most of them were his friends. And not everybody recanted their story, okay? And some of the recantations were related to the shooting that happened earlier, which really I felt like had very little to do with the justification for his sentence and punishment for this crime. So that's the story with that. Like, if you read into it, it really doesn't hold a lot of weight. The fact that these people, it wasn't a whole recantation of their entire story. It's just little tiny details that were different that I feel like may give him an edge. Another thing is his own testimony. I read his own testimony, what he said happened. There were a bunch of witnesses, and if we're just talking about the actual crime scene, what happened in that Burger King parking lot, if you read the witness testimonies, they are pretty consistent about what happened, like just the events that happened. Troy Davis's account, completely different. He was like, no, I was just following my friend. I kept trying to tell him I didn't want, stop arguing with this dude. And then I turned around and left. Like, nobody else said that happened. And these people who are witnesses, who are just in the parking lot of the Burger King, don't have a reason to point out Troy Davis as a murderer or say that he did something and corroborate all their stories. For what reason? What reason would they have to do that? So I feel like he was lying. He didn't tell the whole truth. And I feel like he's guilty because, again, one of two people shot this cop. It was either his friend or himself. And his friend, even the guy who was assaulted, that all this started over. I mean, his friend was the aggressor who started the argument with the dude. But that dude said that the guy who he was arguing with was not the guy who hit him on the head. The actual victim said that was assaulted said the guy I was arguing with, the guy I started the argument with, was not the guy who hit me on the head. Several of the witnesses testified, and this was not recanted, that the guy who hit him on the head was the same guy that shot the cop. So Troy Davis says it wasn't him. Everyone else is saying it was the guy who was assaulted said, he pointed out the guy he was arguing with. He said, that's not the guy who hit me in the head. So he didn't get to see Troy Davis's face. But anyway, like I said, there isn't a whole lot of evidence that shows that Troy Davis was innocent or the other person that he's trying to implicate did it. The evidence points to him. It's just the way it is. And so with all that being true, I can completely understand. A lot of people were criticizing Obama. Why didn't he step in? If Obama would have read this 174-page petition, I would completely understand why he would not have said anything about this. I don't know what Obama's personal stance is on the death penalty, but he did have Osama bin Laden killed because Osama bin Laden orchestrated the killing of a lot of Americans. So why would he turn around and support this guy who very likely killed a cop for no reason? This argument started over a beer. And Troy Davis didn't even have to be involved. He could have just stayed in the pool hall where he was and not got involved, and he wouldn't even be in this. But he chose to follow his friend, and then, whatever happened. I wouldn't support this either. I would not put my stamp of approval. Now, that being said, I do feel like this is a tragedy. I don't feel like his sentence was fair. But I do feel like he very likely killed this cop. So it's just a tragedy, It's just unfortunate that just the way this happened, and the fact that so many people got behind him. I feel like he was lying. He wasn't telling the truth, And so many people got behind him, and people were saying, "Oh, Troy Davis is innocent." Like, where did that come from? He's not innocent. And I had one person on my Facebook post that this was another Emmett Till. And I'm, no, this is not Emmett Till. Emmett Till was like a 13, 14-year-old boy who whistled at a white lady, and he was lynched. He didn't commit any crimes. Troy Davis, not the same story. Okay, this is just, like I said, it's a tragedy, and I feel for both families that were involved. I mean, it's just really unfortunate. I don't feel like justice was served, but at the same time, it's really hard to stand behind someone that you feel is guilty. They're just being punished too severely. So, you know, that's just kind of a, I don't know, a catch-22. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, I did want to say that if you felt any kind of way about this trial, if you tweeted about it, if you had discussions about it with your friends, if you were one of the people like me trying to call the courthouse, and if you went out and protested, go vote. Register to vote if you're not already registered, and then go vote. Vote in your local elections. I mean, that is the best way to make your voice heard. You know, the people that are making these decisions are the people that we put into office to do that. So I would say, you know, if you felt strong about it and you know, want to keep that passion, I felt like, you know, so many people were involved, and I was so happy to see people, you know, caring and feeling like, oh, this is an injustice, so we should do something about it. Like, I love that. So do something about it and go vote. All right. Thanks, YouTube.